Let me get down to that. Is there any public comment on anything that's not on the agenda for the evening? Okay. So we're going to start with PC 13-073, HR 13-04, approval of new commercial building, Mike's Drive-In and the McLaughlin Conservation. No, I just changed it.
Oh. Okay.
I changed it.
Okay.
But thank you for that.
Thanks, Chair McLaughlin. I'm going to move up and do the PowerPoint presentation. And what we may do is Chair McLaughlin's going to read the opening statement for quasi-judicial land use hearings, and then I'll move forward and start the PowerPoint presentation, and then after that we'll ask the applicant to come up and they can make any presentation or any additional information.
Now, because we have two public hearings this evening, I shouldn't have to read this twice. However, I need to read in both public hearings.
Correct, and then when we get to the second one, we can do bias or visit the site for the second one when we do that hearing.
Yeah, but I'll read both these in.
Yep.
So I'm going to have to scroll down as I do this. We'll now commence the public hearing on agenda item HR 13-4, and which is the approval of a new commercial building, Mike's Drive-In in the McLaughlin Conservation District, and HR 13-05, Barlow Road easement modification. The criteria for approval of land use actions are contained in Chapter 17 of the Oregon City Municipal Code. The proposed development must comply with applicable provisions contained in the City of Oregon City Comprehensive Plan. Generally, unless otherwise stated, if a request is found to be consistent with the municipal code, it is considered consistent with the comprehensive plan. If you wish to participate in this hearing, including challenges for bias or conflict of interest, you must complete the sign-in form located somewhere. And deliver it to staff. Please do so immediately. The chair will only recognize those who have submitted completed forms. Testimony will be taken in the following order. Applicant, testimony in favor, testimony in opposition, rebuttal by applicant. When recognized by the chair, please come forward to the podium, give your name, address, and make your statement. All testimony, arguments, and evidence presented regarding this request must be directed toward the applicable criteria or other criteria in the plan or land use regulation which the person believes to apply to the decision. Please address only the applicable criteria for the decision. Please do not repeat testimony. If you wish, you may choose merely to agree with the previous speaker's statements. An issue which may be the bias for an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals shall be raised not later than the close of the record or at following final evidentiary hearing. Such issues shall be raised and accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the Commission and the parties an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of persons to participate in the public hearing either orally or in writing precludes that person's right of appeal to the City Council or LUBA. Written testimony submitted prior to the hearing constitutes participation in the hearing. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the decision maker to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional evidence, arguments, or testimony regarding the application. The Commission shall grant such requests by continuing the public hearing pursuant to the standards contained in ORS 197.763. Do any of the board members have a conflict of interest or ex parte contact regarding this application?
I did have ex parte contact.
Or ex parte, yes.
Yeah.
You want to explain what that is?
The owner contacted me via phone and asked for clarification on the design advice hearing that we held a few months back. And I reiterated our discussion essentially verbatim.
Yeah. Okay. Who has visited the site? Okay. Before we go with the staff, I believe the applicant has 15 minutes?
After staff presentation, yeah.
Before you get to that, I just want to clarify. The applicant has 15 minutes. Anybody who wants to speak for, against, in the middle, you get 3 minutes.
And the neighborhood association also gets 15.
Neighborhood association gets 15. Now, I always say this every time, you don't have to take all the time. So go ahead, staff.
Yeah, thank you. This is HR 1304, new construction in the McLaughlin Conservation District for a new Mike's Drive-In. Just to give you a little context of the site, 7th and Madison. This is the applicant is wishing to demolish the existing structure and move forward with a new building along the 7th Street frontage. Here's a site plan. So once again, you see this is the 7th Street frontage in Madison, a new vehicular access on Madison Street, and a new parking lot. I wanted to reiterate that this is also concurrently going through site plan and design review. And what the board is looking at today are just issues that are pursuant to 1740 historic overlay. The development application, which gets down to the nitty-gritty of development review and that requirements and parking lot and storm drain, those are all related to site plan and design review, and that's been being done concurrently. So any conditions that are put on this application as part of the historic review will be then folded into the development process. Here's a street view showing both we have is, in a sense, it's one new building. It's really architecturally broken up into two buildings. We have the office space, which is more of a streetcar commercial, and then the restaurant space with this kind of arcade seating right along the front. Here's the front elevation again with a parapet and this arcade seating. This is the side elevation. This is on Madison. Did you mean Monroe? And we're going to revisit this. There's a potential discussion item about this parapet. So one of the questions I'll be asking, the staff will be asking the board is if you want to move forward and have further discussions about this, this parapet, if you have any recommending conditions or if you are comfortable with what is submitted today. This is the east elevation. This is a party wall. There's actually a tax lot between this building and the Farr Brothers store, the historic false front building to the south. And so any new construction would be built right up to the building. There is a potential recommendation through site plan design review that may put some latticing or vegetation here for the time being, but that we'll leave that for the land use application unless you feel that there is something, but it is intended to be a party wall next to a new infill project. This is the rear elevation, so if you're in the parking lot looking back, this is what you see. So there are some of the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association and staff concerns. I have 4 elements, and 2 are additional findings the Neighborhood Association has asked the Historic Review Board to make for tonight. And what the Neighborhood Association is asking is when there are design exceptions relating to materials and material of the awning, and then secondly the use of more of a roll-up garage door in the front, that it's that the board makes specific findings for a case-by-case basis rather than inferring that it's allowed by a right for all new construction. So I think as we move forward, if when we do the motion tonight, I would request additional findings that the board can make to affirm why, if you are choosing to approve the metal awning and the roll-up garage doors in 7th Street, why it's a site-specific approval and not intended to be an amendment to the design guidelines and be revisited if this came back at a different building to be revisited in a specific case. The 2 items I'm looking for actually specific agreement are the parapet on Monroe Street. It's a short parapet. It has a quick kind of step down, and my recommendation is to revisit that Monroe Street parapet and propose an alternative that uses a simpler historic return. So I'm looking for recommendations for the board on that.
Is it Monroe or Madison?
It's Madison.
Oh, did I say Monroe? I'm sorry, I apologize.
It's on here as Monroe, but I think it's Madison.
It is.
It is
Okay.
Madison. Okay, let's go back. It is Madison. You're correct.
Okay.
So I apologize. It's this right here.
Yeah.
So what I'm looking for from the board tonight is either One what is submitted acceptable? If it is not, do you have a specific recommendation that we can write as a condition of approval would be ideal tonight? That would be what I would see it'd be beneficial for all parties if we can come up with either a specific condition or accept what has been proposed. The second item, I'm going to go back, is the parapet on the 7th Street is proposed to be hardy panel, which also falls outside the recommended building materials. While some false front buildings have utilized a flatboard parapet, most in the district utilize a lap siding parapet. And the application of this material will be visible above the metal roof awning element. Staff recommends that the board make a specific finding that allows this material or requires the applicant to utilize a 4-inch lap siding along the parapet. And I'm going to go back to the 7th Street elevation right here. So right here, it's a flat hardy panel up here. And traditionally, we've seen on the false front parts of the architecture to be a lap siding, usually about 4-inch reveal lap siding. So what I'd like the board to revisit that is the flat hardy panel acceptable in this instance, or would you recommend moving forward with requiring a lap siding up on the parapet?
Are you proposing that for the Madison?
Yeah, I mean, it would
as
be
well?
for all of the,
Okay.
yeah, it would be for the parapet on both Madison and 7th Street.
Can you go back to the, and then can you flip back real quick to,
Sorry.
yeah. Okay, thanks.
So let me know if you have any questions. If not, we can pass it to the applicant and they can do their presentation, and then we can, during deliberations, just as you're thinking, those are the things I want you to be ready to make findings for. Your approach to the parapet, either the Madison short parapet, the material, is it a hardy panel or hardy lap siding? The roll-up garage doors right here. Are you comfortable making a specific finding? And I did in the staff report, and I can read it real specifically. I said, the board may find that the further discussion with the board is needed regarding this element of the roll-up doors and a specific finding. Garage doors historically were for vehicle access only and were not found on front elevations. The board may find that the roll-up windows could be considered compatible as it is a secondary accent element in a generally compatible building. Staff agrees with McLaughlin Neighborhood Association that specific findings should be made for this element to ensure that they are reviewed on a case-by-case basis. And on a staff level, I think because it is a half roll-up window, you're not putting a garage door as a front door on the 7th Street elevation. I think that it is a secondary element. I think on a pedestrian, public space, urban design aspect, that they're going to be having people sitting up along that ledge and just be very active as you walk down 7th Street. You'll have a lot of interaction with the public. I mean, on a planning idea, I absolutely understand why they're doing it, and I think it creates a good value. But on the historic aspect, there's always a little danger as you move forward in understanding that these garage elements are new and that they were never historically on main elevation. So as long as that finding is made on a case-by-case basis, I think because this is a half garage door and it's kind of a secondary element recessed underneath the arcade, I think it's a reasonable request, but that's up to the board to make, as well as the use of the metal canopy and roofing as a secondary element in an overall compatible building. It's an accent element, especially as also, it ties in with the previous building and the identity of Mike. So it's a way to bring that in a little bit, as well as it's not the character defining part of the building. It's an ancillary compatible element. So those are the things I'm looking for the board to be reviewing as we move forward.
Okay. All right, thank you. Will the applicant come forward, and whoever is coming forward needs to state your name and address. We don't have the clock, do we? Working on it. All right, fellas, I'm going to give you 15 minutes. All right?
My name is Todd Freeman. I'm the owner of Mike's Drive-In.
Greg Creighton, architect, 252A Avenue, Lake Oswego.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay, as Christina said, we'd like to replace our building there. The building was built in about 1959 or so. It was an A&W, wasn't built very well, was falling apart, leaks like a sieve, has for a few years.
If they want to go
We
back.
are in hopes of building across the 7th Street elevation, and the main building can remain for a time until we get ready to do the parking lot, but the canopy will come down right away.
Are you looking to keep the restaurant going while this?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And where was I?
And
In
feel free
regards
to
to the-
use the PowerPoint if you want to. Feel free to
Yes.
use the PowerPoint if you want to go to a specific slide.
Okay.
There you go.
You can just use the forward and back arrows on the.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Oh, boy. Oh, it's back.
It's all good.
Okay, let's start there. There are, I think, 4 main elements that we've been discussing, and Christina went over those briefly. The roll-up windows, I think, they're only 6 feet tall, and although they're 12 feet wide, they really can't be construed as a garage door. They don't come right down to the floor. Similar use for those at the Scenery Hill Cafe right now, but that's I don't know when those were installed, but you've seen those. Also, the Laurelwood Pub in Milwaukee just put some in that go all the way to the ground. But so that's our view on the roll-up windows. We also have an issue. I believe this is the ceiling height, Christina, and that's a design review.
That's site plan design review, so.
Okay, don't need to discuss that. The parapet, I feel pretty strongly about buildings that have a presence on the corner. And the design review guidelines ask for the entrance to be on the corner. Due to the topography of the site, we needed to be able to come straight through, so it forced our entry toward the middle. And we are asking for forgiveness for that shortcoming in the design review process. But to allude to that, we made a 45-degree corner on the loggia there, the arcade, if you will, that you can actually enter the site right off of the corner and enter the loggia area and then walk up some gentle steps to the entryway, which is more in the center of the building. There is a north entry also that is directly off of the parking lot. That will be the primary entry for anyone in a car. People walking up and down 7th will be attracted to this because of the outdoor seating, the covered walkway, and of course ice cream being served right there off of the entry.
There will be, just to make it clear, the window that is closest to the second building is actually going to be an outdoor window. We're trying to take our Milwaukee store, that's original store, and it's got outdoor windows. We want to have a window on the sidewalk there. It won't be on the sidewalk, they'll step onto our property, but there'll be a window that will be able to serve ice cream and shakes and people just walking by. So we'll be able to have outdoor service as well as indoor service.
Gotcha. Cool.
I believe the guidelines talk about buildings on a corner. Christina, am I correct? Was that where I read that?
Well, site plan design review is where you're requiring the buildings on the corner.
Okay. Anyway, the way I addressed that was to step up the parapet as it wraps around the corner. And we feel it's an appropriate solution with the chamfered corner there as well. We're trying to use a variety of colors and textures on this building. I've got a full color board here. I've got the brick sample I also have hardy plank samples. These are the exact colors that we'll be using.
Are you using wood grain or smooth?
Wood grain for the lap siding. Yeah. Now, what you're referring to is the hardy panel. It's an upper parapet?
No, lap siding comes in smooth. This would probably need to be smooth, not wood grain.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard that anywhere.
I've been using it for 15 years.
Oh, no, I heard of the product. I just didn't realize it was part of the guideline.
No, it's kind of typically we talked about it, but go ahead. We can talk about it.
And this is a sample of hardy panel smooth. When it gets painted, it's quite smooth. It does need to be installed with a reglet flashing that'll give it some lines, very fine lines.
Is that the width of it?
No, it comes in
The 4x8
huge
sheets?
panels, 4x8s,
Yeah.
10s, and 12s. And so when you step back more than 10, 15 feet away from the building, the little creases will essentially disappear. But what we're mainly after there is a change of texture. And this is a fairly newer product. As far as it being used in the district, I have noticed a building that's being renovated down on Main Street right now that has some sort of a panel product going in on the upper. They're trimming it out with some kind of wood trim, but it is a panel material like this. I've also got the brick sample.
Do you have that? Where is that? Can we see it?
On the drawings, we called out this chestnut, and we're actually kind of leaning more for a little richer color here, the autumn blend.
Gotcha. So can I ask you, you mentioned in your comments in your application that you're proposing that, which is less expensive. I know why you're proposing it. I mean, but you're not opposed to having lap above. You said it would go either way.
We prefer this, I think, because of the change. When you've got a sign and everything up there, I think that the way it looks different. It brings up a different look. We had also talked about what's the acceptable, not mosaic, but it leaks too much.
Hardy makes an adobe pattern, which is a stucco look.
Right.
Well, stucco was allowed, but stucco leaks. I mean, stucco, there's a lot of problems with stucco.
Yeah, and the Hardy stuccos,
So we wanted to change textures, and we didn't want stucco because of the problems that
We've
come
got a
in with
lot of lap
stucco.
siding on this building already, and I'm really hesitant to
Gotcha.
go all over with it. One more item, the metal roofing, that's not an allowed material in the district. I do have samples from the color sample for that. Staff, can you comment on the red metal roofing in our discussions that we had?
Oh, I think that's kind of what I'm asking the board is, if moving forward with, it's not that it's a prohibited material. It's not, one of those recommended easy materials. If you remember, our design guidelines are kind of the safe harbor, easy path.
Right.
So when an applicant proposes either material or an architectural design or something that is not specifically recommended as kind of the easy approval path, it's really up to the applicant and the historic review board to kind of make specific findings for why, in this instance, it is still compatible. So one recommendation is to look at, what that, metal is. Metal has been used historically. It is a secondary element to a compatible architectural style. The reason why the applicant's using it is to bring in the element of the previous building, which was a mid-century modern building. So, there's findings you can make, but I think what the neighborhood association wants, and myself as staff, is a case-specific finding that allows or does not allow it. So it's understood each time someone comes in and proposes something outside of kind of the pretty clear and objective design guidelines, we just have thoughtful findings of why.
I guess when I look at it, what you're proposing makes sense. It's you're trying to bring that back, from the original drive-in. But if you got a material that's being subjugated, you're trying to keep it secondary, but then you make it red or something, it's going to be a kapow,
You got to understand, that's our colors, and that's,
Yeah,
you know,
but-
you also got to understand that we currently are probably 90% metal. I mean, when you look at what our building, we're coming to, 10% metal. I mean, if even that, and it's not a roofing, it's an accent is what it is. So,
The pagoda style roof that's there now is pretty dominant, tower, like a tower. This piece here, not only is it 12 feet above the sidewalk, actually it's closer to 14 feet at the corner, but it's a 412 pitch, and
Right.
it's going to have a diminished effect.
Are you opposed to, on the Madison side, reducing or eliminating one of the parapet walls that maybe you can
Yeah, I
be broken
have,
into
I have
two?
something in mind there that.
Maybe just go straight across, when the parapet goes down, just have it go straight across
I have a question about that.
on this side?
Yeah, if it wraps around and then it does, because here it looks like it kind of matches, the dissension matches the scrunched up space, where the other one matches the elongated space.
Right.
And so
Eliminate
if
it,
you...
the one.
Yeah, if you eliminate one, it's not going to match the other side, and I think it's going to throw it off.
One thing that
the
could-
thought was, like, what if you brought this guy over right
That's
here?
exactly what I was thinking.
And then
'cause,
this kind of makes this like the predominant element just because
Right.
of the proportion.
And the parapet in the back, I'd probably go ahead and wrap that all the way across the back.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
extra 2 feet.
That's right, yeah,
And because that just helps screen our equipment even more than it is already.
yeah.
That would help that elevation.
Okay.
Your drawings call out a stucco finish for that panel. Are you going to go with a smooth?
We like smooth.
You are going with smooth, so the drawings are incorrect.
we wanted to get away from this. I mean, we didn't want to use stucco. We wanted to use the smooth.
Well, stucco's more money.
The drawings,
And it leaks.
well, the drawings call
No, it's
out a
done
stucco finished panel, so that's why I was looking for that clarification.
Right. What we're prefer is a hardy panel smooth.
Okay. All right. What reglet were you going to use at the joints? Which reglets were you going to use at the joints between?
Like a 3/8.
Okay. What's the profile? Which profile?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not sure the exact model number, but it'll be installed vertically.
Okay. So it'll be a single
You'll have
vertical
a
that you see?
4-foot intervals with a 3/8 inch gap.
What's the height where the business name goes? That panel, what would be the tallest panel that you have? So like where it says business name, if you're proposing panels, what is that height right there? Do you know?
Oh, that's about 8 feet.
8 feet.
Top of parapet looks like it's
It's 22
32.
overall.
No, I'm just talking where that panel, you've got like a water table thing going across and then a
Yeah.
panel go, I was just curious what that height is.
Just what the business name is, and it's
Right.
probably-
That's about 8 feet.
8, okay.
It comes in 10s and 12s.
Okay.
More to add, Todd?
I just think that we're trying to better the community, and obviously we're trying to keep a little bit of the old in there. And although our old is not historical, it's something that is part of Oregon City. We've had so many people come in since the word has gotten out. And first of all, it's like, why don't you just remodel this? Why don't you just do this? Why are you doing something new? You're going to change something. And it's like we're trying to tell them, no, we're going to make it better. We're going to bring some of these elements in. The community actually, surprisingly enough, a lot of people have been very partial to the A&W that's there. The problem is that I wouldn't put nearly the amount of money into that building, but for the amount of money I'd put in there to recondition it, remodel it, and redo things, it's still going to be a 1959 building. And I believe, because I own the house behind it also, that was built in 1902, that, in the early 1900s, buildings were built very sound. And by the time you got to the late 50s, 60s, and 70s, they started being building pretty cheap. If you walk behind my building and you look at the back of mine, there is no siding whatsoever. All it is plywood that's been on there painted over 2x4s. Water's gotten behind there. I know there's structural problems. I know that my roof has dry rot. I need to replace the entire awning. And it's like, this is the best way to go. But we need, I feel like we are bettering the community in so many ways that, like I said, we're asking for a few things. I think from when we originally brought our drawing in, we've altered it to, where I feel like you guys pointed us in the right direction, and I think we're in the right direction, and I think we're almost there. So I want to get approval.
Yeah, almost there. That's right.
I might add that we're totally fine with going with smooth lap siding for everywhere else on the building. I also have a SketchUp model, a 3D rendering of this building on my laptop. I was going to plug it right in here, but
Probably not right now, though. But
is this an
thanks.
HDMI connection?
You can maybe do it when you guys come back, but I've got to stop you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Okay.
Actually, if he's going to bring you information, I want to do it now before we have a chance for a public comment. We're not going to open it up again.
I'll just bring it up here and set it up right here rather than mess up your connection.
We are going to get the same hamburger, right?
Of course. You know what? It's going to be the same burgers.
Papa burger?
I'd like to add some new items. I mean, I'd like to do a few things, but you know what? It's going to be burgers.
Yeah.
I mean,
Burgers.
you know what I really want to do is I really want to focus
yeah.
on burgers more than.
My family goes there, and they wouldn't go anywhere else for hamburgers.
No, it's Mike's is Mike's.
Yeah.
So,
Levels of a parapet on one side.
And then I'd ask for our file, if you can email that to me so I can put it into our file. So that's great. And then,
Oh, I see. That's the coloring you're going to use.
Yeah,
and
that
if you
helps.
could also provide that to the audience as well.
Show everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that helps.
Okay.
So the red roofing really
I've got a question on that though, because that shows the panel all over the lower building, and your drawing shows lap siding on
If you zoom in on that, it shows the lap siding.
Oh,
You got to probably get close on it.
Okay, and that lap siding occurs only on the 7th Street facade? It does not strap on,
Madison.
come across from the Madison facade?
No, it's
It goes across.
lap all the way around.
Okay,
Just the upper parapet is
Gotcha.
because I don't see that on the side elevation on the Madison one.
There's brick below, and then I guess it's around the windows, I guess.
It says it's
yeah,
panel.
that's an error. It's supposed to be lap, everything
Oh, I do
below
see
that
that fiber
belly
cement
band.
panel.
Okay.
All righty. Hey, thanks, guys.
Yeah.
I'll ask you back after comments if you have any rebuttals. So the only person I have from comment is McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. Denise, if you'd like to come up and state your name and address.
Can I take just a quick look at this first?
Yeah.
It's kind of changed since I've seen it the last few times, so.
I'll give you a maximum of 15 minutes.
You got it. Thank you, HRB Chair and members. You've received our
Oh, go
comments.
ahead and state your
Yes,
name and
Denise
address.
McGriff, and I'm representing the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. And in our submittal, just want you to know that we've had 2 opportunities to review this particular proposal, and I specifically put the dates in on my comments that I submitted on behalf of the neighborhood. I also had an opportunity to meet with Todd and Greg earlier, prior to them coming to the Neighborhood Association, and I will tell you that it was a cordial meeting. We talked a lot about the criteria and the standards. I emphasized that a great deal and suggested that their testimony be oriented towards making it easy for you all to make a decision. McLaughlin Neighborhood supports Mike's Drive-In, and a lot of us spend a lot of time there getting ice cream or shakes or whatever. So it's a well-known entity in our neighborhood, and we're very happy to see that they are proposing to upgrade, so to speak. And I've known for a very long time about the condition of the existing building. And I think, to quote Todd, it was probably only a matter of time before the thing might have just fallen down. And I really appreciate the fact that he is making a significant investment in Oregon City and particularly in our neighborhood, because that's also important. But back to the criteria and the standards, which is what I'm really going to focus on, is that Christina has basically mentioned many of the things that we talked about and pointed out. And I think it's important to recognize the fact that there was nothing intentional about them proposing things that didn't meet the guidelines, but we talked about that a lot. The guidelines are giving us the framework for what we need to be looking at. I think in terms of the roofing, the neighborhood association didn't have any issues with the fact that it was red metal. The issue is, again, as the staff pointed out very clearly, is that that's not a material that we find on the acceptable list for the guidelines. And if you make specific findings with regard to the elements that Christina very aptly mentioned, I think that we could be very satisfied with that as long as the findings are very tight. Again, to go back to precedent, we don't really want the next applicant to come in and say, well, you let them have this, and without those very specific, site-specific findings. Greg mentioned very briefly about Singer Hill Cafe, and I will point out for the record that the difference between that application and this application is Singer Hill Cafe, as many of us know who lived in the community, used to be Oregon City Plumbing. It had garage doors, roll-up garage doors already. When the Yateses bought it, they narrowed the openings and put in roll-up doors. So, and that was not subject to historic review because it was only an alteration. This is subject to historic review because it is new construction within the McLaughlin Conservation District. So they really have no bearing on one another, whether there are other roll-up doors in the neighborhood or not. They're not subject to the same standard. I think because of the reasons that Christina outlined, we could find the roll-up windows acceptable. And again, we want you to make very specific, site-specific findings in your approval to allow those. We don't have any issue with them. We just want to make sure that the application is very tight. Probably the only difference that we have has to do with the smooth, hardy panel on the upper portion, and I think we would prefer to see it be lap. We think it would be more compatible. We kind of had a difference of opinion. Half of us said, yeah, it was okay. The other half said, what about the design guidelines? And I think I would err on the side of the design guidelines and say, yes, it should be a smooth lap. And I appreciate you mentioning that about the material, John, because it makes a difference whether it's that rough material, which really isn't very compatible with our historic city, but it would look better if it was smooth. The other thing that we talked about that was really good, and Greg assured us, is that even though Todd does own the house behind, you've got an elevation difference, and we've had some issues with new buildings coming in, and you get to see all the equipment on the roof. And I think we are very satisfied that the parapets are going to screen that, and that won't be visible. The people who live above obviously are going to see a little bit of it, but generally from the street or even another elevation in the neighborhood, you won't be able to see that roof material. And I know that it'll be addressed as part of the site plan and design review. So that is really great. They don't want people seeing it either. I think the thing that I really want to point out to you that I think is really terrific is that when we initially had talked to Greg about the building, both buildings were going to look really similar. And we really like the fact that the buildings, although they're one building, look like two distinct buildings. It's really good. It gives it a bit more character. It flows very much with the continuity of the neighborhood and that 7th Street commercial corridor. So other than that, I think that we talked about the lap siding have a 4-inch reveal. Greg wasn't aware of that, and he's totally fine with having that be that narrow focus. So other than the things I brought up, thank you very much for letting us have our comments, and we like we thought the brick was good. And we think that this will be a really nice addition to our neighborhood, and we appreciate the fact that Todd is investing money again in our neighborhood and our city, and I think it'll be really great. And I look forward to many more of those fresh strawberry milkshakes.
Thank you very much. I know that no one else has signed for comments, so that would be it. Do you guys have rebuttal? Do you want to come back up or to say anything else? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, then one of you can come back up. Or both. You both
Can you
come
come up
back
to the
up.
microphone?
We need to get you in the...
You got to come up here and talk.
I had a question about what the roof slope is. I think I see on the back, basically from where the gutters are,
Sorry, could you repeat that?
from where the gutters are, I can tell where the roof meets at the back elevation. But what is that roof slope?
What is the slope?
What is the
It's like
slope?
a half and 12. It's almost flat.
Oh, okay, essentially flat. Okay.
And the metal roof's 3, is that right?
4.
It's a 4. Is it really?
What size HVAC unit do you have on the roof?
There's an awning.
What size HVAC unit do you have on the roof?
We don't even, I haven't even talked to a heating and air conditioning company.
Oh, okay.
I personally, I would tend to think that there's going to be more than one. It's my preference to have one for the dining room. So if I was going to guess only, it's probably going to be a 5-ton for the dining room. The kitchen area could be either a 3-ton or a 5-ton also. And then, of course, there's going to be something for the remainder of the buildings, for the small rental areas, and I'm not quite sure. That's something that, until we get approval, I mean, I haven't really gone and talked
Yeah, that's
to
not-
heating companies.
So
and-
much for us to decide.
Site plan and design
no.
review does have requirements for shielding HVAC, either on the roof and also at a ground level. So
Okay.
that will be brought in as part of the site plan design review, and even after the fact as part of the building permit. If there's a ground level, it'll have to be screened, and if it's it's viewed as it cannot be seen at a pedestrian level from rights of way.
Yeah.
But my
It'll be
take-
well screened. I mean, that's why when we originally came in here, as you called it, we had the mushroom up there. Was the mushroom was going to be a room that everything was in there. I mean, that was our whole idea. I mean, I don't like the looks of it anymore. I think when you look up at our building now, one of the worst things is you see compressors, swamp coolers, you see all kinds of stuff up there. And
It's part of the
we
nostalgia.
want it clean. It looks a lot better.
People think they're pretty.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything
That's-
else? Derek?
Yeah.
No?
If you'd like, I can do a little orbit on this SketchUp model so you can see it from all sides.
Can you twist it around to the back?
Is it touch screen? Oh, come on.
Someday.
Oh, cool.
There you go.
See that?
Yeah.
So if we raise that parapet, it would just continue it all the way
Right.
across there.
Then you'd for sure have coverage. You would have, yeah, but it would look better. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have any questions on the board before I close? Anything? Anybody have questions for staff before I close?
I just have a quick question. Is
I'm sorry, you gotta come up to.
I just wonder if the new design is what he was talking about, because obviously I can't see it from here. You're talking about extending the parapet, this is the new.
John suggested
Okay.
taking that largest notch out of there and actually
Two
raising
steps
the roof
down.
right here.
Okay.
Take this and continue.
And continue it. Okay, that's what I thought you were saying.
So
Thank
instead
you.
of being a 4-foot jog, it'd be a 2-foot jog. You'd raise the back parapet another 2 and wrap
Right,
it.
right.
I do have a question about the two-story element. So I noticed on the plan, the interior restrooms did not appear to be accessible.
Yeah, it's not required.
I believe that it is. And
Double and triple check that. Revised chapter 11.
It's something we have.
okay,
Your
Hospice
entry
over.
door though is wheelchair acceptable, right?
I'm sorry, what?
It's wheelchair.
It's all
Front door?
ADA.
Oh, the whole ground level is, but we're not required to have the upper story accessible.
Right.
It's under 3,000 square feet.
well, I'd push it back on that a little bit. I believe that it's still required to meet those standards, but it's not required to have an elevator. So you're,
How do we get the ADA people up there?
folks can still get up there and the building can still expand
Yeah.
past that point. So any Title II building doesn't necessarily have, under 3,000 square feet on the second floor, doesn't necessarily have to meet the elevator requirement, but still has to have the clearances. And I think you'll find that when you go through the building permit. So let's just say theoretically, those
Okay.
restrooms get larger.
The excerpt from the revised chapter 11. If you'd like to look at it.
Just for the sake of argument, if those get larger, what happens to your 7th Street facade windows?
Sorry, was that a question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What would happen to your 7th Street facade windows
If what?
if those restrooms have to get larger? Because it looks like those
Talking on the second level?
on the second level.
The only window that's really affected is that center window.
Can you switch to the plan?
I don't know if I have, let's
Not
see.
sure if there's any.
I don't know if I have the second floor on there.
Oh,
It would be up at the very front.
I think you just had the site
I
plan.
think I just have the site plan.
Yeah, it's offices.
okay.
Yeah, I know that the restrooms could be rearranged without having to relocate that window.
They could be? Okay. That's great.
If it was.
Because our preview is the exterior.
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, appreciate it. I'm going to close the public hearing now so the board can talk amongst ourselves, even though everybody can hear.
So if we could go back to those kind of 4 questions, I'd like.
I'm curious to know what other people think about
Well,
those things.
I'd like to address the red roof, the tin roof, the metal roof, sorry. I see it as a part of Mike's signature logo and his brand recognition. So if we stipulate that as part of the criteria of allowing it, I think that we would be safe in approving it without making it a slippery slope for anybody else that wants to use a metal roof.
Would that be an exception to the guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, the guidelines are, once again, it's that clear path. It's a safe harbor. If the board is reviewing alternative proposals, it's really up to both the applicant and the board to make findings of why they're still compatible with the overlay zone for compatibility. And some of if you want to move forward with approving the metal awning, some of the findings you could make would be the bringing in the signature element, that it's a secondary element, the architecture of the building is compatible. Those are the kind of things you can bring in. It's ancillary. Those are the kind of findings
That's 2
I would
reasons.
expect you make tonight as part of the
Oh, yeah.
process.
I think we
Yeah,
can
and
figure all that out.
I second Cindy's opinion that it's essential in the brand recognition, and it is an accent element.
Yeah.
Yeah, every time we deal with something like this, it's always about setting precedents. Every time, every single building that's new, it's if you do this, you set precedents. And I'm in agreement with that 100%. However, this is unique. I get that there is the nostalgic piece of this that, the A&W that becomes Mike's, that thing's pretty ancient. I mean, the material on it's ancient, albeit even historic. So I get that. I'm curious though, the 412 pitch, you want to make it secondary, subjugated to other things. I don't know if the 412 might be showing too much of it, but maybe that's just fine because it's not big.
No, it's just an awning.
Yeah, but I do think that the Madison side should just have 1 drop down instead of 3.
Okay, and you don't think that's going to look weird?
No, I think it'll look much better with 1 drop than 2.
I think it'll look better. I'm not opposed to the garage door things.
I'm not either.
I think it's.
I mean, windows.
It's whatever they are.
The windows.
They're not
They're windows.
Windows. Okay. Roll up windows. Now, you could make the argument that they could be single hungs, which are historic. They could be casements, which are historic. That would fit. Casements go out.
And ease of use.
These go up.
So, yeah, but then you have to make sure that you're not setting precedent. So how do you?
And it's also a commercial building, though.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that is different than when you look at a residential structure.
Absolutely.
The same rules don't apply.
No. I think it'd be a great element.
Yeah. And you could look at it in the way that it's a partition window.
Well, I also look at
They're
this
not
as
all that way.
It's a large expanse of broken glazing. And there's something to be said for that. It's just in a more contemporary expression.
Does anybody know when A&W was built? 1959. Okay. So how I kind of look at this is just like what the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association commented, the design of the Wright building the right side is very historic, and the restaurant doesn't look like that. But there's a reason for that. It's got to be unique. It can't follow everything. What I disagree with is using the Hardy panel.
Okay, my question about that is, if you were to use the siding, the 4-inch siding, is it going to be exactly the same as the other siding that's on the building? So there won't be no contrast. It'll just be all the same size.
Different color. But, you know,
I'll throw it out this way. They're looking for a change in texture on the facade. And
maybe
there's
fine.
a lot to be said about that, but I don't see a strong reason to go to a panel in this instance. It could be done in color. It could be done in a different exposure flap. There are other ways of going about it.
When you put up
see an
panels,
exception.
you have joints, but you also have nails.
And stucco is also an option for that. It's a more expensive option. I understand why they don't want to go there.
Right.
I'd be fine if it was flat if it was
The integrity
stucco.
of the Hardy stucco is not.
No,
they're saying that the integrity of
itself.
stucco is not good. There's applications that are good, but
Because I thought they were going to use the Hardy stucco.
No, it's a stucco finish, which is completely ahistoric.
Right.
They're talking about a smooth.
Right, I know,
And-
but their alternative was the panel with the stucco already on
and
it.
there's just no way.
Yeah.
I just, no.
the drawings say stucco, but they are proposing a smooth.
Right, I know
In
that.
all actuality, yeah.
So it has seams. It'll be visible across the street as easily as it is 10 feet away. And there's nails. You have to face nail this stuff.
Yeah, I will point out that the Dairy Queen across the street does have a flat panel Hardy with reveals.
Yeah. So, so then something like that product,
But that is not subject to HRB review.
No, because it's already built.
It was an existing
Across the
structure.
street.
and it's competition. So I guess I don't have a problem. From my end of it, the doors aren't a big deal. This is me. The metal's not a big
You mean the
deal.
windows?
These are very site specific to this property and the allure of it. And I think it's like a new Mike's that's trying to stay historic in a more ergonomic way. It's a throwback a bit.
And I think they said their other store in Milwaukee had it too. And there's something to be said
Yeah,
for
we can't talk about that.
consistency with a chain.
No, I think the walk-up window is the same. I don't
That's
believe
what I'm
they.
saying, but don't they have a roll?
Yeah, but that's
don't
kind
think
of
so.
cool to have that. You know, that invites
But it's
people
a-
to come down.
Yeah, it's a good element. I think it's.
But what's your thought on above the awning?
I don't see a strong reason not to have lap siding if it's required by the code.
Okay, but as long as it's like different color, because it's just going to be one massive siding.
Well, they could choose that. And I should say, I don't see a reason to deviate from the specified siding types. Doesn't
No.
have to be lap, but as long as it's a specified one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you could be different to give different texture.
It could be different color, it could be different
But
exposure.
then
it
you're
could be
also
different
making the
material.
argument, this is a commercial building, and are we deviating in a couple ways? Which we are.
Yeah,
So then
but
you-
how much do we want to deviate?
Right.
One additional finding that was brought in the staff report, looking at traditional false front buildings in Oregon City, they generally all had lap siding on the false front. So that's one thing that, what I was, the finding is if you're looking at the design guidelines and generally what the historic buildings had was lap siding. But once again, if the applicant has proposed a compelling reason why, this is where you make that finding. So it's, what I'm hearing is there's compelling reasons for the roll-up doors and the awning, but what I need to hear is there a compelling reason for the flat panel on the parapet, or if not,
Well-
then the recommendation is to go for
Right.
A lap.
the lap siding.
Yeah. And
Of a varying
but
review.
when you look at Mike's, there's, like you said, it's all one big rust bucket. It's metal. And I guess what I'm also looking at is this is supposed to be a modern take on Mike's. And I don't know if I can make it a condition, but it's not a historic property, but it falls under the 50-year plus. So it's an old building. It's historic. It's got serious integrity for the city of Oregon City. So I guess, and I would hope that they would do this, is document Mike's pictures, anything to save before that thing gets smashed, so that, let's just say for argument's sake, and for the McLaughlin's sake, that, not mine, that somebody comes in and says, hey, you guys did this for Mike's. We want the same thing. But our precedence is the original Mike's, the A&W. That's unique. It's not going to be applicable somewhere else. I guess that's where, for the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, they're looking for specificity on what we're granting. And to me, the only thing that I see is the uniqueness of the A&W. It's not anywhere else in Oregon City. You couldn't say, you guys did it for these guys, so why can't we have it? Well, because there was only
you're
one
not
A&W.
You're not an A&W.
There's only one. So that's kind of where I see there's a little brevity in allowing these things. But that's just me. I don't know if you guys feel any different on that.
I agree, and I think we've touched on that for both the window and the metal roof. The question of the other two items.
So the outstanding items are the step-down parapet on
I think we
Madison.
agreed to that it would
And
be one step.
then really we're down to
The siding.
the siding on the parapet on both elevations.
Do you have any opinions, Bob?
No, I would agree with all three, but I'll go with what the board says. What I'm wondering is, procedurally, are these all three exceptions to existing guidelines?
They-
So are we granting exceptions? Is that what we're doing?
I wouldn't go down that path. They're proposing an alternative proposal that you are accepting. So
Okay.
it's not the guidelines are not written in a sense of a black and white. They're
Right.
saying this is a easy path to approval. When you propose an alternative, the burden is harder on you, and you have to provide why you have reasons for either being compatible. And so that is what I think McLaughlin is asking in the findings, are in
So-
those three places
right.
when there's an alternative.
So John's mentioned a couple of times that what we want to do is not use this as a precedent. So is there a procedural way of
I think
making
it's
it-
when you do make a recommendation for approval. What I'm going to see is, what I see right now is a new condition relating to making sure the lap siding is smooth,
Correct.
which I do not have.
There's no price difference either.
And then a recommendation about the step-down parapet on Madison, having
Yeah.
one step down.
Correct.
In the middle, being the middle step down.
Yeah.
And then depending on the direction of the board in regard to the materials, there may be a third condition relating to lap versus panel on the.
Yeah.
So I see those are the conditions, and then what I'd like to see is, with that motion, additional findings that what you just said, just
Yeah.
added into the motion.
Don't you remember any of that?
But just real quickly, those findings about those, as discussed in our deliberations, you can just highlight it really quickly. And that's what I'd like to
Because I
see for
can't
the
remember
motion.
what I said. So I guess, does anybody have a strong opinion on that above the awning?
Well, I like
Christina?
to see contrast.
Do you mind switching it to the facade so we're all looking at it? Please continue, Cindy. I'm sorry.
I like to see contrast in material, because I think unless you've got a real stark difference in color,
Or Madison.
you're going to be able to see that from
Right.
across the street.
Thank you.
Right, from that one?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, just because you got a difference, don't make it right.
No, I'm saying it just looks too.
I understand. You know,
Boring.
But
And this is not supposed
actually,
to be a boring building.
what would look appropriate, but it is real stucco, real smooth stucco. It would look killer, but I know the cost constraint.
What you're also not seeing there is the joint lines, which are very prominent.
You'll see them. You'll see them every 4 feet. You'll
Doesn't
see
matter if
little
they're
dots that are the
painted.
nails that
Yeah.
have to hold that.
I'm not saying that I want them to have the smooth siding. I'm just saying I want to see contrast, and if that's
It is contrast.
if you could use another material to get it that way, fine.
Looking at a different reveal width for the lap siding, is that?
Maybe.
Well, it states 4 inches.
Well, no, I guess is there a different reveal for the parapet?
Maybe you go with a different
what-
siding. Maybe you go with.
You could go with a wider side. You could even go with an 8-inch reveal. That's a little but
Or what is that
You could.
kind that's the kind I
Shingle?
have?
it's scalloped.
Yeah, scallop. No?
No way.
No.
Sorry, I'd have to say no.
Fine.
No, that's more of a Queen Anne sort of thing, Victorian gig. I don't know, man.
How much, would the nails show that much? I mean, don't remember seeing one.
They're very, very small. I mean, I just finished doing it. Anyway, yeah. You'll see something, but it's very minute. Yes.
Shiplap. How about shiplap?
I guess it may be worth it to poll the board at this point.
I want somebody else to say.
Just the.
I've given my 2 cents.
I think it's the where this is really. It sounds like this
We
is
do
our
this every time. We
our
have to poll.
outstanding issue, which is either allowing
Very
the
close.
panel to the siding and making findings for it, or requiring lap siding at either a range or a specified reveal as a condition. That's where I'm seeing it's really a choice of one or the other.
I would approve lap siding, either in the same or a different reveal.
What reveal? What's the max?
I would not specify it.
Yeah, then they'll
Not more than 8. How
They'll
about
do a
that?
4-foot reveal.
Not more than 8. Not more than 8 inches. How about that?
I don't know how that would look.
Typically, you see a smaller reveal above a larger.
That's correct.
No, larger under smaller.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
That's what that would be,
That's
wouldn't
what I
it?
just said.
It'd be larger over small rather than small over larger, is that what you're
Right.
saying?
Well,
But if you
only
had
if
a
you
larger-
condition that, but if we leave it open and arranged,
What
then
if
they
it
would
was
have
a
the
board and
freedom to
batt?
choose. That would be fun.
Because that's a historic look.
Yeah,
You've
yeah,
seen
yeah.
that on
Yeah,
upper parts of buildings.
Yeah.
Would that look
That would
cheesy?
work.
1800 buildings, yeah.
Would that look cheesy?
Staff doesn't like it.
It'd be smooth hardy with a bat every 16 inches or every 24 inches.
Oh, that's clever. Or
Like the
maybe-
sheriff's office.
That's true, and it would look better. But again, we're talking about.
I'm just throwing out ideas here. I don't have a strong opinion.
Alternatives.
Dang it.
Well, this sounds like the outstanding issue of the night. So.
Well, we can figure this out. We can. So we can all.
We have to.
Do we want to jump to a different topic and then come back to this, or do
No.
we want to try and solve
This is the last
We can
topic.
figure it out.
Okay.
We're done.
I want to do this. I want to open the public hearing and ask the applicant to come forward, please.
With some ideas.
So I'm opening the public hearing. If you fellas can come sit down for a second. So let me ask you. You've heard us and you've gone through your head thinking you guys are nut jobs or whatever you're thinking. But all these things we're talking about, we're in agreement on 75%.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, it's all groovy. So,
My question
yeah.
is this, and I don't understand it. If there's a new product out there, and if you don't try it, how do you know if it really fits into it? I mean, I think that we are. You guys are 75% there. I mean, I'm happy. I'm very happy. And if we need to make a change, we will. But I know that the texture difference will look so nice to the community. I think it will be a compliment. I believe that it will look, you guys will be happy. If you guys don't try it and try a product that hasn't been used,
I've used this product, and I just used it last month in a stucco product where it was in an English tutor.
Okay.
And I know what it looks like. And I know
I've done a lot of projects with this particular product.
and I know exactly how it's going to look.
Okay.
That's why, but it's your cheapest
but if it's not in the
alternative.
community, it's not just,
It is.
yes,
It comes down to
price
money.
is some of it, yes, definitely.
100%.
This whole thing is, to be honest, has grown and grown and grown. Even getting to this point has gotten.
Oh yeah, well, you live in the neighborhood, you pay.
And I'm not a McDonald's, I'm not, I can't believe what I'm doing. I ask myself, what are you doing?
You're keeping the economy rolling.
So
Exactly.
Let me ask you this question, purely hypothetical without having you to commit to anything, but if this doesn't work, do you have a fallback for what that period would look like?
I don't think we have a fallback, but we're open. We don't.
Okay, so
We
you don't
haven't
have a
designed.
suggestion or idea.
We really haven't designed. I don't know if Greg has put thought into it.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
bet you have.
I have a thing that might be a happy meeting of the minds here is we're after a different texture on that parapet.
Yeah.
don't want lap siding. There's already a lot of it. What would you think of a board and bat treatment using Hardy Panel Smooth?
Well, that's what I just said.
We just
I said Hardy Panel Smooth with the bat every 16, and then
It takes care of the nail
I got the
problem.
look my wife gives me all
Takes
the
care of the
time.
texture problem. It actually, that's kind of a short building. And on this end, the other one's quite a bit more massive.
And I don't know if that would work. That was just an idea that I had, that you put up those panels, which you're planning to anyway. It's nothing to add a bat. And, Hardy makes bats. And
I'm open to that.
you
It's
cover
all-
the nail holes, which
Right.
is going to be exposed. You cover the seams, which are going to be exposed and ugly. They will be. Trust me.
The one downside is it gives it a distinctive Western flavor that we may not
It
be
does.
after.
How about we ask you this question, you can describe it. What makes this building unique and that application unique that we should approve board and bat as opposed to what is prescribed in the building code? And that is the key element that we're looking for.
Is board and bat an allowed pattern texture in the guidelines?
Not in this application.
Okay. As I said before, we're after the texture. We'd rather have something smooth or nearly smooth for that to counteract the line work and design on the right side of the building, the east side. Our preferred is the smooth panel throughout, but if you're not comfortable with that, a board and bat treatment would be a.
Well, I only think of what you're wanting to do will look naked, where, in a sense, that you're putting a product on that's traditionally used in a board and bat application, and you're putting it on without anything on there, so it's half clothed. So you're going to see joints and you're going to see nails, and you're going to see it across the street. And you're going to see it when you drive by. You will. It's not going to disappear. It's not going to just blend in. It's not a huge thing, but your sign's there, right? It's on the corner. That's what draws people. They're going to see that more than they see what's underneath. And so it's certainly not a secondary thing. It's a primary gig. So
I disagree on the nails. You're not going to see those. They're going to be painted over, and
See
with
the
proper
nails.
maintenance, you won't
I'd have
see
to
it.
bet you a Mike's Drive-In lunch on that. Guaranteed. But in the board and bat thing, it's not really a Western thing. It's still
Historic.
it's historic.
I'm not saying I don't
but-
like the idea. I'm just asking why we should approve that as
I'm not saying
course,
It's a good alternative.
I'm throwing out free, I guess, crappy advice.
yeah.
So I'm just trying to meeting of the minds. What can we do to make things? So anyway, that's it. I hear what you're
And
saying.
now that we've opened up the hearing, I want to allow ability to have public comment as well, just so we.
Yeah, if McLaughlin wants to come back up and offer an opinion. Thanks, guys. We're very close. We'll get rocking and rolling here.
Don't fall. I'm medically trained, though, if you do.
You do CPR.
Well, I can see why you're struggling. Denise McGriff, McLaughlin Neighborhood. I would have to agree with Derek, and I think putting a lap siding up there is going to look more appropriate than a board and bat.
Oh, yeah.
I was in my mind trying to see the little panels up there, and I think you've got too many different elements. The brick element is there, which breaks it up. You've got the other building with some different elements that are breaking it up, and I don't think having lap siding up there is really going to, like you say, I agree with your point, John, also, that people are going to be looking at the sign. And I think there's a way you can do the lap with a different reveal if you want a different.
Taller reveal?
You could do a little bit taller, or you could make the bottom a little bit wider and then the top narrower. But you look at where's that?
What if?
It's down there. If you look at that.
But could all of the lap be taller? I know there's a 4-inch, but in this case, could all the lap be 6?
Yeah, the ground
Could we
floor
go to?
6.
I would do all of it so that. One, it saves money, but then it keeps it consistent instead of a tight reveal to a large.
I would say on this building only. I wouldn't do the 6.
No, I would agree. I think a 6-inch reveal would be appropriate.
I think anywhere between 4 and 6 would be appropriate.
Yeah. So, okay.
Thank
All right,
you.
thanks. All right.
And also, just one more point. I want to make sure that I reiterate what Christina said. When you get down to your final decision, we want to see the decision come out with the findings in it, not just the conditions of approval. So everything matches up.
You have to
Denise?
remember what I said.
Denise,
Sir.
can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
The windows on the two-story building,
Yes.
was there any discussion on the second floor?
We talked about that. I've got my, yeah, you flipped to it. Let me get
Yeah.
my drawing real quick. So you're talking here, right?
Yeah.
We did talk about it. What I was looking at in the guidelines, which talks about the rhythm of the windows being in similar patterns, I have to remember now, Greg, did you add a second window? Or no, you moved the center window over so that it's in the center
up
of
with the doors.
the two doors. I think that's what that's what my notes say here. I would have liked to, I mean, they're more traditional pattern. They're a 1/1. You know, if I was nitpicking it, I would move the profile of the window up so it's a true 1/1. This is a more modern interpretation, but he made a lot of changes to this on some suggestions we got from the neighborhood. So the bottom windows, I'm not so thrilled with. The top windows, you're going to see more. I like those better, but we can live with that.
Okay.
You guys want to make some changes to it?
Well,
We can live
I will point this out.
Yeah, we can live with
That
it.
on a commercial building, 2 stories, there's usually some variation on the first floor, but the second floor, I mean, look at, give me an example where this is not the case, where the second story floors or windows are consistent all the way across the facade.
Are you talking with the broken up ones on the left as opposed to the grouping on the right?
Yeah.
So you're looking at the grouping on the right to be separated to match the left side?
I'm just bringing it up. So I'm surprised that the neighborhood didn't bring it up,
Yeah.
given that they didn't have,
Actually did.
you did.
We brought it up, but we
Was
said.
that comment provided to
No.
Christina? Okay.
That was in our deliberations we had with each other. The pattern you would see would be a break between the 4. Instead of the 4 together, it'd be 2 and 2.
But what was the upshot?
We said we could live with it because they gave us some other stuff that we asked for.
Okay.
Okay. All righty, before I close the meeting, when you go to print your elevations and you get rid of the shadows. There shouldn't be any shadows on that elevation. You got to see everything for what it is. Okay, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Now, I think we could say the siding could be a 6-inch reveal overall on the entire project. And that
On
would,
the 1-story piece?
yes,
Thank you.
but on the Mike's part.
Right.
Does that seem like a compromise that with a larger reveal all the way up, because of the size of the building, it would probably
Yes,
even
but
be
if all the other siding's going to match it, it's no different than if you just made the siding the same as the other is now.
No, but when you look at the right building, that's a 4-inch exposure.
Okay, so you're
that
gonna
has
leave
to
that
stay.
4-inch.
Correct.
Okay.
On Mike's, we'll make it clear that it will be a 6-inch reveal.
Okay,
Smooth.
gotcha.
Does that seem
Yeah.
like a?
Yeah, I'm
Derek?
fine with the 1-story element being a 4 or a 6, as long as there's not a larger exposure.
I would
over
say
the
maximum
lower.
6.
Yes.
Right, in a condition. Okay. Okay.
Okay, so what I'm seeing is the addition of 3 conditions of approval and then additional findings. So just condition approval number 1, the applicant shall redesign the parapet on the Madison elevation to reduce it to only having 1 step-down approach.
Correct.
2, smooth lap siding shall be installed in all elevations of elevations of both buildings.
Correct.
A 6-inch up to a 6-inch reveal on the restaurant portion of the building, and a 4-inch reveal on the office portion of the
Correct.
reveal. And
But if you say up to, then you can put 4.
That's fine.
the question is, do we condition
You
an
won't
additional
know.
part of this condition approval to indicate that if there is a change in reveal, the parapet shall be the smaller reveal?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
if, but it doesn't say it has to be, but if there is a change in reveal,
Yes,
is a
They have
change
the
in
option.
reveal,
do that.
the parapet shall be the smaller reveal.
Yeah, that's how it's got to be. Or they could keep it all uniform as 6, yeah.
Or large on the bottom and smaller on the top.
Right. And then we need additional findings for the overhead windows, the metal awning, and.
But I think those findings would be that will be approved.
Right, they'll be approved, and then just a sentence about why, and then along
The
with
findings for the metal roof would be that it is essential branding for the existing building. It should be carried on. That it.
It is unique to Mike's.
It's a signature logo of brand recognition.
Yeah. And findings for the roll-up window is that it's not a door, it is a window. It's held up off of the floor plane. And it is a modern take of a
Commercial.
divided light window.
Okay.
It's unique to
Unique to a commercial building.
unique to a commercial building, and unique because it's a restaurant. It's more applicable. It's more inviting.
Okay.
These are site specific. So if there's anything in the future, it's because of Mike's.
Okay.
So
I am seeing everything I need right now, so if we want to have a recommendation
Would someone
for
like to make
approval,
a-
I think we have everything we need.
would someone like to make a motion?
I have a procedural.
The meeting's closed. The public hearing's closed.
procedural question.
I don't.
You should add the accent element.
Accent.
You said, I wrote down what you said the
Oh,
first
that was the
time.
other item.
Yeah.
The metal roof is an accent element.
Oh, and the metal roof serves as an accent item that's unique to Mike's
Mike's.
existing.
And it's ancillary to the larger architecture.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a better word than subject.
I would add a note as to the parapet, that though this is, because what I don't want to do is set a precedent for that sort of parapet on the lower building. If these are truly treated as separate buildings aesthetically, you would not have that corner treatment. That is very unusual. And also the windows on the second floor. So I'm going to say because it is one building and they're looking for variation.
Yeah, well, it'll have excellent variation. Okay, well, does someone want to make a motion on those findings and those conditions?
I move we approve HR 13-04 with the conditions and variations we just discussed.
I will second that.
Okay, can we have a vote on that then?
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Derek.
Derek.
Okay. Mr. Seward?
Aye.
Ms. Toll?
Aye.
Mr. Metzen?
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin?
Aye.
Motion carries.
There you go, fellas. Go forth and
Do good.
spend. And, yeah,
Keep those burgers rolling.
happy Thanksgiving. Okay, let's move on. Let's get rolling here. Okay, the next item is, where is it? Hold on a second. Where is that? So this is an open now public hearing, HR 13-05. I need to ask, do any of the board members have a conflict of interest or ex parte contact regarding this application?
No,
No. Who has visited the site?
I have.
Driven by it
Yeah.
quite a bit. All right, so we'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you, Chair McLaughlin. This is a little bit of a unique application since we don't often get Barlow Road corridor projects in front of us. This did actually go in front of the board in 2007, and I very much remember this application. It received its approval for subdivision, but the market at that time was not ready to move forward, and the applicant and property owners held on to this property, and now is, with the market kicking up, is ready to move forward and resubmit, for the most part, the same subdivision application back to the City of Oregon City, and the same issue that we were addressing in 2007 is back again here. And I'm going to give a little bit of background to provide some context of some things have changed and some things are the same in regards to issues relating to the Barlow Road tonight. This is also going in front of a subdivision application on a type 2, a lot like Mike's that you just heard. What your purview tonight is just looking at the Barlow Road overlay and the preservation incentives that are being requested for the reduction in width of the lots. And that was asked as well in 2007. With any conditions that are put on this, it'll be part of a plat restriction on the subdivision. Often what happens, what we do with these Barlow Road visual corridors is at the plat, there is a note on the plat that says, per our 1740 code, that an open visual corridor shall be maintained in this area when it's platted, and no new structures can be put in future. So if someone came back, built their house, and then in 15 years wanted to come back and put an accessory building or something up front, so whenever a building permit has come in, we look back to that plat restriction. So once it's platted, that's there. You'd have to get rid of it. And the Barlow Road historic corridor was created in the early 90s after a study commenced by Clackamas County to look at creating this Barlow Road from Government Camp all the way to Oregon City. There was an initial report released in 1988 that had some studied the alignment, and then there was a further refined report in 1993. Just to give you a little background information, in 2007, when this came in, we did some research on our end, and we actually realized that we never, as a city, adopted the 1993 report. And so the applicant actually was moving under the 1988 report, which was less which is a little bit bigger picture. You know, this is generally the road, this is Mount Hood, this is Oregon City. And so subsequent to the 2007 approval, we actually went back to the City Commission and they did adopt the 1993 report, and we actually amended our 1740 overlay code to direct to that. The other part of our 1740 overlay code I want to direct you to, and I'm going to read this. Let's see, I gotta get to it. And I apologize. When a lot is subject to review of the Barlow Road, the board may alter the location of the road as long as, quote, a minimum of a 30-foot wide open visual corridor be maintained and shall follow the actual route of the Oregon Trail if known. If the actual route is unknown, the open visual corridor shall connect within the open visual corridor on adjacent property. So staff finds that the applicant has submitted a proposal that allows for an open visual corridor to be created that connects to an existing Barlow Road easement to the north. And staff also finds that the proposed offset does not compromise the visual corridor, and by placing it adjacent to a future right-of-way and public easement area, the road can be accessed by the public. While both options look very similar, staff recommends that the HRB require the applicant to utilize option 1, which is this one, and this was the option that was adopted in 2007, where the center line of the county maps are always, the center line stays on the revised corridor, whereas this one, it's kind of all moved a little bit to the west to further align up to the road. So it's a little bit of a jerk. When it says the section about if the route is actually known, I had a conversation with Carrie Richter, our city attorney, just to make sure that my understanding had not changed from this 2007 where we had kind of these dueling documents. And my understanding is relating to when it says where the actual route is known. If you look to the document, and I'll bring up I provided to you two pages of the 1993 report, and on it you'll actually see locations where there are known ruts of the Barlow Road, and those are actually located outside of the city limits. And inside the Oregon city limits, there are no known ruts. And so the 1993 study was to the best extent that they could with an understanding of where that road came. One thing to know is as you got closer to Oregon City for the Barlow Road, everyone didn't come into, Kelly Field right in front of each other on this specific road. I mean, there are parts of the Barlow Road where everyone did kind of come in a specific orientation, but as you got to Oregon City, there were lots of ways down off of Park Place, and they over time. But so what the 1993 report did is they tried to verify what was they thought the original alignment that Barlow did, and believe in 1840 to 42, if I get my dates correct. And so what my recommendation is this slight alteration to the west, knowing that in this part of Park Place, the 1993 report did not identify the specific location on this property, but the general alignment, that staff feels that moving it slightly to the west still maintains what the goal of this overlay district, which is a visual open corridor. This is not an access overlay. There, you're not providing public access to the site. This is people's front yards. It's a no-build easement onto plat restriction on the property. So that is what the only concession that this overlay can get from a private property owner when they redevelop is that they plat a no-build easement. It's not for accessing the site. So I believe at staff level, the applicant, both in 2007 and today, by slightly amending it, if you're at Holcomb Boulevard and you are looking up through the site, you are still making that visual connection to the property to the north. And what the applicant did in the property to the north, they have their main house and a detached garage, and they have their driveway, which is actually where the Barlow Road corridor is. So you're once again creating this visual connection. And so slightly moving it over allows the applicant to redevelop the property to the extent of the zone, as well as provide good use of land within the city limits in an orderly fashion. So therefore, both in 2007 and today, in concurrence with Carrie Richter, our city attorney, she feels that the board has the ability to make this modification because they can make the finding that it is meeting this specific thing. A minimum 30-foot wide open visual corridor may be maintained and shall follow the actual route of the Oregon Trail if known. If the actual route is unknown, the open visual corridor shall connect with the open visual corridor on adjacent property. And I feel that the applicant has done it, especially in option 1, and that's what staff is recommending tonight. The second part is because of the orientation of the corridor being in kind of the front property lines, the applicant's kind of forced to skinny up lots 4 and 5. And right now they're also asking for approval to have a 56-foot wide width for those lots instead of a 60. So
For 4 and 5.
What?
For 4 and 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
So therefore, since we're at a public hearing, rather than having them go through a separate planning commission hearing for that same request, we are bundling that up as part of this hearing and using the historic preservation incentive. Yeah. And I really see that in a sense that we're asking for a pretty reduced front setback. And I think that's a reasonable request to allow kind of longer, skinnier lots as part of this process and allow this parcel to be redeveloped to its kind of zoned opportunity of R8. So that's really all I have for this. So that's really the 2 questions we're asking the board tonight is, do you think this is a reasonable request and can it meet the findings? Do you agree with staff that option A should be the only recommendation, or do you see option 1, or do you see option 2 being also allowed? You can make a comment on that. And secondly, do you see that the request for the reduction of the lot width is reasonable? So those are the 2 questions before you tonight, and the rest of the subdivision application will go through its normal type 2 staff development review. And these will just be 2 issues kind of folded into that when it goes to platting.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. If the applicant can come on up and state your name and address. You've got 15 minutes or less.
I can't do this in 5 minutes. You should flag me down.
Thanks for your patience.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just hanging out. My name is Kirsten Van Loo, V-A-N capital L-O-O. I'm here on behalf of Landmark Consulting Group, P.O. Box 1928, Vancouver, Washington, 98668. I'm the backup quarterback today. John Marcourt is the developer of this property is also a land use planner. He's back in the Midwest celebrating Thanksgiving with his family. So he called me and asked me to throw one long pass, a Hail Mary. We're going to do this real quick and get it done. The Barlow Trail, having lived in Oregon for a long time and lived in eastern Multnomah County, Barlow Trail is really famous. We know that it's an intrinsic part of our history. As staff stated very succinctly, once the wagons hit the developed part or the more developed part of Oregon City, even back in the day, they didn't all stay on the same road like they did when they were coming over the mountain and coming through Welch's, and where you can actually see tracks and trails and fences. And so what we have here is a line on a map. And what we know is that lines on map are drawn with felt tip markers, and at a certain scale, the felt tip marker ends up being about 30 feet wide when you scale it on a tax map. And what we've done is taken that wide line that was drawn with the felt tip marker and found the exact center of that line and said, well, this is where we kind of think probably most of the people came through this area. Unfortunately, the piece of property that's left over at the end of the day is shaped miserably for residential development, with a very busy street with no allowed individual passenger vehicle access, which makes life even tougher, because if we could have rearranged our easement, our view easement into our backyards, life would have been a lot easier. But access is difficult. The need to provide the potential for connection with properties to the west, the fact that we can't get any access off Holcomb and the eastern part of our property has to access off of Swan, gives us about 17 different constraints to developing this property. And what we are asking for tonight is either option A, which gives us kind of a wiggly easement, but it does keep the approximate center line as mapped with a felt tip marker.
I'm sorry, option one?
Option one, excuse me. Did I say option A?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Oh, that's what happens when you call the wrong play. You know? Option one keeps the approximate mapped center line within the 30-foot wide easement, creates kind of a snaky move through the property. As you can see very clearly, it pushes the houses on lots 3, 4, and 5 to the east a little bit from lot 6, creates very large front yards for lots 3, 4, and 5, pushes the houses back, probably gives us a much bigger front yard than backyard, and connects to the easement to the north, which is the neighboring property owner's driveway and parking lot. Option 2 would actually be John and Mac's preferred option, because it realigns the center line. Granted, it realigns the center line in a way that is 20th century or 21st century engineering, land use planning, street construction. We can assume that when our forebears came in the late 1800s or the mid 1800s, they didn't travel in straight lines unless they actually could get from point A to B in a straight line. And so option 2 does straighten out the assumed or hypothetical alignment of the old trail. The main reason is to reduce the amount of front yard on lots 3, 4, and 5 that would be dedicated to the easement, because as you can see, as the easement runs north, all the land that is to the west of the easement becomes unusable for anything other than yard. The easement is a line on a map. The easement will not show in the built environment. I don't believe we're even required to sign this, are we, staff? So the easement that is a view corridor pays respect to our forebearers. It does not provide any legal access. It does not provide school children the opportunity to walk down the old alignment. It provides at best an opportunity for an individual to stand on the sidewalk on Holcomb Boulevard and go, oh, that's where we think the wagons went through. Whether it's snaky in option 1 or it's more straightly aligned, more 21st century engineering aligned as in option 2, I would say is of little consequence to the people who come after us. It is to some consequence of Mac and John, who would like to have a larger rear yard. Either option is acceptable. It's your call as board members. As staff mentioned, we are asking for slightly reduced widths in lots 4 and 5 from a minimum required width of 60 feet to a minimum required width of 56 feet. In part because of the way this land is shaped and the way we have to take access and also pay homage to the alignment of the Barlow Trail. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer it.
It looks like it's just 4 and 5 you're looking to try and pull back, because it looks like 3 and 6 are still in the same position.
You're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. Because of the need to connect Centerline to Centerline with the project to the north, you're actually correct, sir. It is 4 and 5 that we would end up with a smaller front yard and a larger rear yard. You're absolutely right. Is that a deal killer? No. Is it critical? No. Obviously, the surveyors would love to have a straight line. It's a lot easier to draw that on the plat map, but we can work with either of those two alignments.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions?
Anybody have questions? No?
Did I do it in 5 minutes?
No?
But you didn't use all the time, so.
Yeah, so you're fine. 7 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next up is Bob LaSalle. If you'd come forward, you're the Park Place Neighborhood Association Chair, and as such, you have up to 15 minutes. If you could state your name and address, please.
Are these your glasses?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll trade you.
Thanks.
There you go.
Okay, my name is Bob LaSalle. I live at 16298 South Oak Tree Terrace in Oregon City, and I'm the chair of the Park Place Neighborhood Association. The Neighborhood Association wishes to be put on record that we do have some concerns over the proposed development at that location. It was stated on the paperwork that we had not submitted a letter of concern. In fact, we had a letter dated 29 September 2013, was hand-carried and delivered to the planning department. I've got copies of that for you here.
But we're not the
I don't
planning
think
department.
no, but I don't think I
No,
received that.
we never received it in
I
our
never
packet.
received it, so.
That was given to Kelly Moosberger on that date. And
Who was Kelly Moosberger?
Oh, one of our planners, so it just may not have made it into our.
and then I went back up there, probably 3 weeks later, to confirm that the letter was part of the record. And you were out of the office, and they didn't want to disturb your desk, so that's what happened with that.
Can it be submitted as evidence now?
Absolutely, yeah, the record's open, so let's do that. And that can be submitted as Exhibit 1.
Wait, 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can.
A1.
Our specific areas of concern are as follows. Ordinance 16.04.010. Purpose, it states, increase consumer protection by assuring only those lots which have met city requirements and have been lawfully created through subdivisions or partitions approval are allowed to be advertised for sale. And these lots do not meet city requirements in regard to width. And another ordinance, approved criteria and justification for variances. And the applicant's response was, no variances are being filed for the project development site. The applicant is requesting leniency for the lot width for lots 4 and 5 through incentives offered by the existence of the historic corridor on site and its impact on the available layout. Well, the historic corridor has no impact on the lot width whatsoever because they're 90 degrees from each other. How would the location of the Barlow Trail affect lot width. I just can't see how it possibly could. Furthermore, Lot 6 is actually under width due to the storm drain facility, which is not shown on that map, but I'll give you the information on the maps that I have here. Ordinance 17.10.040, dimensional standards, minimum lot width 60 feet. Applicant's response, I already told you that. Item E, minimum required setbacks on this side yard should be 9 feet and 7 feet. And applicant's response, all lots will meet or exceed the minimum required setbacks, but the drawings actually show the side setbacks of 5 feet and 5 feet, which is much less than R8 designation. During our steering committee meeting, which some neighbors were also there with Mr. Marquardt, the neighbors asked about the setbacks, the side yards being shown as 5 feet wide. And he noted in his notes, advised the neighbors that the development codes would be followed, and if the side yard setbacks were 7 feet and 9 feet, that is what the plan would show. I still haven't seen any changes on that. And also, a neighbor asked if he was the builder, and he advised the neighbor that he was only involved as a planning consultant, or in fact, it now seems that Mr. Marquardt is in fact the owner. So, I don't know if there was intentional omission or what, but the papers that I have here that I'll pass on to you are just my narrative just now, and also the letter that I brought up to the planning department. And then the map that I referred to that shows the storm drain facility between Lot 6 and Holcomb Boulevard. There's a little area in there. So that, in fact, for all practical purposes, puts that also, that lot, at less than 60 feet.
Unless there's an easement for that on that property, which would allow it.
Okay.
I can pass that around so everybody.
Well, I've got copies.
Oh,
for
great,
everybody.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So we'll consider that one exhibit?
Yeah, this will be
Yeah.
all.
Great.
Thank you.
So I guess in summary, we can't see any reason why the lot widths should be allowed less than what R8 designation requires of 60 feet width, because the Barlow Trail has no.
It's perpendicular.
Right. Well, I have a question for you. Irregardless of if he said he's a planning consultant or an owner, it doesn't necessarily require him to be the builder or the owner. Mm-hmm. There's no reason for that. I mean, there's, I guess what I'm saying is if he's a planning consultant or if he owns it, doesn't mean that he's the builder as well. Unless,
I have a question. Are these lot lines proposed or are they actual?
On the picture here.
I mean, are these
couldn't
actual lot
tell you
lines? Or are they proposed lot lines?
This is the proposal for the layout of the subdivision.
Okay, so they have not been drawn yet.
This is what the
this is the application.
Yeah, this is the application.
Okay, so they haven't been
correct. The
sent.
subdivision application is concurrently being reviewed
Okay.
by staff. It actually is incomplete right now.
Okay.
That this is what the applicant is turning in for his proposed layout.
So my other question is, was this developer approached by your neighborhood association to reduce the number of lots to make the lots more ample and to fulfill setbacks and space? Were they approached to do 3 instead of 4? by your neighborhood association?
I can't tell you for sure whether that was brought up or not. We did bring up the fact that the lot widths were less than R8 requirements, which,
And they had no,
if that is not allowed, then naturally the larger
There's an incentive
lots
on
would
that.
go.
Was that applied for back in '07?
Correct. That
The
was also
56 foot, and they were approved?
Yes.
Okay.
So just real briefly,
Yeah.
the setbacks, the kind of footprint of the homes, if the applicant is not requesting a reduction in the setbacks as part of the subdivision, if a builder
They have
comes
to
in,
meet the
they will
code.
meet the setbacks.
They'll meet, yeah, so
So
he
the
might
law-
have on there 5, but in order to turn in, they've got to meet the setbacks 7 and
Unless
9.
the
That's a for
request,
sure.
unless there's a reduction requested as part of a land use
Yeah,
process.
so it'd be a separate variance, and they're not proposing that with this.
Okay, because the neighbors were, of course, very concerned about the
Sure.
squished-in feeling of the
Yeah,
buildings.
it would have to meet the code. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Bob? Nobody? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Thanks
time.
for your patience.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Would the applicant want to come up for any rebuttal?
And then Ms. McGriff.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, I forgot I had this other one here. Denise McGriff, as a resident that has 3 minutes.
Yes, I actually have quite a few questions, and hopefully you can answer them for me in my 3 minutes. Denise McGriff, resident of Oregon City. I remember this from 2007, so I am assuming that the reason this is back before you is that approval expired.
Correct.
Yeah.
And now we're starting all over.
Yep.
So my sole purpose for participating in this part of the hearing is dealing strictly with the Barlow Road. And Christina is correct that when this area was annexed into the city, we adopted all of the land use and historic review and any of the landmarks that were approved by the county. They just kind of carried over into the city when we brought this in as part of the health hazard annexation. So I guess a couple of things that I have questions about that I had from back then was how will the individual property owners be made aware that it's a corridor? And since there are no structures allowed, will they be able to fence the backyards? And if they're fenced, how are you going to have a view corridor? Then the other thing is there going to be something on the plat itself, as I think you said, yes, there will be something on the plat. What about the individual deeds that go to the people so that they know that this is there? And that was primarily my concern in 2007, that somebody, let's say I buy lot 5, is my recorded deed going to say, and by the way,
There's an easement.
you have this easement on here and no structures are allowed.
Has to be.
Blah, 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 blah,
If these
blah.
are actual easements,
This will be a plat restriction.
but that would
Asking
be,
about the
But it won't be
specific-
on- necessarily
I'm
on the
asking about
deed.
this. Most people, when they buy a lot, they don't get a copy of the plat. I'm asking
Well,
about
I
the
did.
deed. Because I think
they should get a copy of the plat.
So-
That's kind of required for
I think
title.
you should make a condition or
Yeah.
a requirement that be on there, because they're not going to know. And I do have a couple of colleagues here in town who are Barlow Road Oregon Trail experts, and we have, not in this property, but we've stood out there on the sidewalk and looked at the corridor. So he knows. I mean, he is an expert. They know where it goes and where it kind of went.
Yeah.
So I have 2 responses. I think they're
Sure.
good answers to them. The first one, the outstanding issue in the city exactly is fences, because we don't, in Oregon City, our code does not consider fences development. We don't review it. There's no permit for it. So right now, as long as I've been here, there is an understanding that fences are allowed in the Barlow Road plat restricted area, no structures. So that,
They can fence off the road itself?
correct. The way our definition of development does not include fences, therefore it has always been allowed. So you're right.
Yeah.
It is not the greatest, view corridor
Then it's
because
not
we
a view
allow it.
corridor anymore.
Right, but the way we've always determined, so if that, we'd have to revisit our code to deal with the fence issue, because right now I don't see a nexus for us not allowing fences.
I'm just
Yeah.
asking, because it's either a view corridor or it's not.
Yeah.
That's the big issue.
So that hasn't changed. Right now, we do allow fences in
Yeah,
the
okay.
easement. The second part, in regards to the plat restriction, if the board felt that that is something we could do, we could add an extra condition to make sure that the plat is, and the restriction is recorded as a page a document, so it gets picked up as part of
Right. Sure.
a trio, as part of when you buy and sell a house. And I think the front yard is not as difficult. A lot of times what's been hard is when the Barlow Road has been people's rear yards.
They add things
And
or
they
put things
don't
in the
realize
back.
that they can't put the accessory building in their rear yard, and then they come up to the city and we throw out the plat and then we kill their dreams. So it's nice to know when you
In
buy
there.
the house that it's there.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Is
So that's really the main issues. And then just to add something to what the applicant's representative said is that when they did get to this part of the county, there was still a lot of timber. They weren't able to see Oregon City as quoted by Joel Palmer until they were a little further down. So they probably did meander a little bit, but there probably was an area that they came through, because you know how those wagons where you can't, the trees wouldn't have allowed for.
You're not going to go
But
crazy.
they probably
Yeah.
wandered across those lots. in
Yeah,
different places.
they probably did.
Yeah, they
I know
probably
one of the
fanned out.
subdivisions we approved when I worked for the city, we were able to, he platted it so that the Barlow Road corridor goes right down the street. So you go to that development and you can actually stand in the street and you can see the view corridor because it's there physically. Nobody's fence or house is in it, but it is paved. So,
Yeah. Okay.
okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the wagon trains would have liked that.
Pardon?
The wagon trains would have liked that.
Oh, they would have loved the pavement. Have you ever ridden in one of those wagons?
Once, yeah.
Oh my
It's not
God!
fun.
They have no shocks, no nothing. It's a wonder why they walked. I mean, I rode in one for a half a mile, and I said, "Let me out."
Walked away.
Yeah.
Can we have the applicant back, please? I have one question for you. And I guess, unless I didn't hear it, but what is the impetus for reducing the setback or the lot for 4 and 5 to 56 feet?
I can't answer that question until I ask staff a question. Can I
Yeah,
put
yeah,
that question
yeah.
on hold for a second?
I know it was approved before. I just want to know why.
And I may not know the answer, but I think I know. I'm a lousy backup quarterback, and I didn't do the minimum density calculations. Can you tell me whether the loss of a lot would bring us down below minimum required density?
I can try to do. You need to be 80%. So I don't know what the. If you can give me the square footage of the whole
I can't give you anything.
site. So
In front of me
in
today.
our subdivision review, and I'll get you this answer if this is important. You're required by city code to build up to 80%. You cannot build below 80% of the density of the zone, so you can't underbuild. Because the idea is we do a housing analysis, we zone our properties, we want to be able
certain
to
densities.
have people build to our zoning, so we have an understanding. So one of the that could be one of the findings, that not allowing the reduction of the width could potentially drop it under the 80%. I think why we looked at it before, if you see the kind of the flag lots all coming together, that actually will turn into a city right-of-way, because it actually is then connecting up to the west. There'll be a little bit of a small 20-foot right-of-way loop road that comes back through the two parcels to the west back to Hunter. And what we're trying to do as a city is removing as many driveways off of Holcomb as possible and trying to provide as many alternative access interior. So we have to be a little creative on how we do some of these infill properties in Park Place and in other areas like up in the Hilltop, where we have pre-existing kind of rural county development, and we're trying to infill these subdivisions. And so we are working to try to create to the west where those flag lots will actually probably turn into right away.
Were the same density requirements in effect when it was approved the first time?
Yes.
So chances are that you do meet that requirement.
Well, the question is, if the reduction was denied, you most likely would drop off a lot.
Right.
And the question is that lot dropping you under? I'd have to do the math. It probably is not, but it could be. But that is one of the.
Does anyone have a
that's one of the-
calculator?
I have a calculator.
You know how calculated.
We just don't know the size of the lot.
It's on one of these drawings. It would be 330 by 280 divided by 2, because it's essentially a rectangle. That's not quite.
It's not exactly a
So it gets you
triangle.
closer than not.
330 times.
That's 92,400.
Hold on, it should be.
Oh, that's
Let me go ahead while we're trying to do the mathematics, and let me give you some answers to some of the questions that were asked by people who testified
Dividing it by.
with questions.
2A.
Do I have you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. First of all, the easement, which will be a 30-foot wide view corridor easement in honor, paying homage to the Barlow Trail, will be recorded on the plat. It has to show every easement on a piece of property has to be recorded on the plat. It will be so noted what that easement is. That easement will show up on every individual title report, because any easement that is recorded as part of the plat will show up on any title report for any subsequent property owner from now ad infinitum. So I don't know that we need a special separate condition
Only
of
if that's something
approval,
that's going to happen. No, you're right.
because it's already going to be covered by state law.
Conservation easement, yeah, it
Right,
will
it's
show
covered
up.
by state law and your city ordinances.
This is what I got.
This proposed easement is running in the front yards of lots 3, 4, 5, and 6, not the
Yeah.
rear yards.
Right.
And so I don't think that the city allows 6-foot fences in the front yards. Am I correct?
3.5 foot.
So we don't need to worry about 6-foot fences in the front yards. However, I'm willing to bet one of those Mike's Hamburgers that our property owner to the north has a 6-foot fence along his rear yard. So the view corridor will go from Holcomb Boulevard up to the north property line of Lot 3, at which point you will see a 6-foot tall fence. I am sure that that property owner has a fence there, which is the best that we can do. I know that everybody's calculating, and we hopefully, if we could find a quarter section map, we'd know the area.
You'd rather keep all the lots than eliminate one, correct?
Absolutely want to keep the lots. What is also important to understand is that because we have to consolidate accesses and we have to do what is essentially a group of flag lots, the whole portion of a lot is not counted towards lot area.
Actually, it is.
Oh, it is in
It
this
should go
jurisdiction?
toward it
You
if
do
I-
count it towards area.
Yeah.
But, okay, well, that's very unique in this jurisdiction, because in most jurisdictions, you cannot count the pole. However, we're having to set aside this numerous number of poles, which is lot area, to get access back,
Right.
thus giving us a very restricted lot layout. Thus leading us to the conclusion that a 56-foot wide lot, as long as it meets the area and it obviously meets the depth, the reduction in the lot width will be corresponding in the reduction of the width of the house, so that the houses meet the correct setbacks.
Sure.
Thus the houses will be narrower, thus we will not have what is an overcrowded or untypical development for the zoning district.
But this is R8, right, Christina? And I see all of these lots are far greater than 8,000 feet, with the
Lot 2 is
exception
not.
of 2, which is 7243.
We allow 20% lot averaging in subdivisions.
Okay, then that covers that. It takes care of it all.
So I'm guessing that we're at close to minimum. I'm not
don't see
positive,
this.
but close to minimum density.
I don't see the 4 feet. It's a big deal.
58.
Still have the same square.
And that's
You
again, as the
still
backup
over-
quarterback, I believe that we're doing the best we can with a very difficult piece of land.
Well,
Yeah, it's
even
not exactly a square, and
No.
you've done a good job of keeping them fairly.
But even reducing 2 lots at 4 feet still keeps you far and over R8. I mean, there's
Yeah.
still plenty of square footage on the lots.
Yeah.
You know, even on the width.
The lots
It is not as if they
are
aren't
wide.
developable.
Yes, that's correct. The point is, if we dropped a lot, would we go below the minimum density?
Right, but I don't think that's your goal.
No,
That's
it's
why-
not. Absolutely not.
But I just don't see it as a...
Actually, minimum density is 5.8 lots.
So we cannot drop a lot.
So you got to stay where you're at.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay.
There, I think we've, in a roundabout, long-winded way, thank you very much for doing that
Okay.
calculation.
Can I have my pen back?
In the roundabout, long-winded way, there is a reason why the lots are only 56 foot wide, because we had to get 6 lots on there.
Right, okay. Does anybody else have any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Can I say one more thing real
Okay.
quickly? Because I did hear one of our citizens talk about the fact that one of the best solutions to put the Barlow Trail is to actually put it in a public right-of-way. Oh, excuse me.
I don't think so. I think it was having a view.
Okay, well, I'm going to interpret that to say that if we put it in a paved right-of-way, we keep it open, or if we moved it so that it was aligned with the access line,
Excuse me.
to the best degree possible, it would create the best view corridor. Now, excuse me for taking your words out of context.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to close this public hearing.
I've got to say that it does bother me just a little bit that it is just a very vague line on a map.
Yeah.
And so I'm struggling with two things here. One, it's an extremely, though it's known, it's extremely imprecise.
Pretty ambiguous.
And two, we have to match it up on both ends. I'm less concerned about the road shifting
Can you go
slightly.
to
Yeah, sorry.
the options? Please.
As I am the jog at the end. And so if we were to approve option 2, which I don't, really doesn't bother me other than the fact
There we
that
go.
I think that they should be allowed to adjust lot 3 if the lot directly west of them, I suppose, or is that
Instead of just
north?
part-
Directly north of them was to change, for some reason, their alignment as well.
3 stays the same regardless of how it changes. I mean, where the house is placed, if you look at it, it stays the same.
Yeah, but I'm saying for the preservation of the view corridor, because really,
Option
it's
1.
a generic line on the map. But the important thing is that view corridor being generally there.
Yeah, and if you're standing on Holcomb looking up center, on option 1, you're getting
Yeah.
a center all the way through. Option 2,
Not so much.
You're not.
And that's the appealing thing about option 1, but they have to tie in on the two ends of the lot, though that part that they have to tie on the lot is pretty ambiguous to start with.
Right.
When was the line drawn on the map the first time? When was this?
80s.
80s and then 93.
Yeah, so we had the 88 report, which was even,
There's sort of a traditional aspect to this as well, right? Because it is 100 and so odd years old, that map.
right.
Well-
So the 1988 map, if you want to take the felt tip metaphor, the felt tip was very big.
Yeah.
And the 1993 map got much more refined.
Yeah,
And
those
that-
are part of the staff
Yeah.
documents, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, those
But
maps.
the 1998 map is not. And actually, the 1998 map is like big dots through, it is big dots through Park Place. If you think about it that way.
Oh, they were all over this area.
I don't have a problem
The lines make sense in the first place.
with reducing the lot widths. I don't know. I see in 07, option 1 was approved with the lots and this squiggly line. They're just looking to align, it just comes down to lot 4 and 5, where the house can go. They're trying to pull it away from Holcomb or that area and get it more, this
But
way.
isn't that a planning decision? That's not an
Well,
HRB decision.
Because we were going through a type 3 hearing, to me, it made sense to combine
Yeah.
the hearing rather than making the applicant go through a third
birds.
planning commission
Yeah.
hearing for variance, knowing that on a staff level, I do see these are interconnected. A little bit of the
Yeah.
width of the lots based on the configuration of the triangle piece and the inclusion of the Barlow Road. Having a notice public hearing, all of those could be talked about tonight, and having an appointed type 3 body make the decision was done on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have no problem with, and the applicant also said they would go with either alignment and having the incentive with the lot reduction. So if that was the case, then I would be more inclined to go to option 1. Because if that is either one, and I look at it as it gives a little bit of character for the lots. The houses aren't like straight up. 4, 5, and 6 gives them a little bit of setback, and I think that distance isn't so atrocious that it's going to make a difference. And that's just what I'm looking at.
I agree.
What do you think?
Yeah, I have no problem with the lot widths, and I'm fine with option one. Obviously, it was approved before.
Yeah, that's how I'm looking at it.
Same.
Well, does someone want to make a motion? We have two things. Conditions approve option one and the incentive for lots 4 and 5 to have a 4-foot
Yeah.
width reduction to 56 feet.
To
Okay.
meet, should we provide a finding for that to meet
Yes,
minimum?
please, especially as it relates to the Barlow Road corridor, it'd be helpful.
Okay. Well, for the width reduction, to meet minimum density standards for the housing units, and the width, or the Barlow alignment, being that the known route is inaccurate, and we are keeping the assumed center line of that road within the view corridor proposed by the applicant.
Excellent.
That work? Does anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
On HRB 1305? Someone want to?
So moved.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody want to second that? Okay, can we put it to vote?
Right,
Sorry.
Ms. Toll?
Wasn't listening.
Aye.
Mr. Metzen?
Aye.
Mr. Sievert?
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, go home. Everybody go home. Zach, that's a lot of patience, man.
Yeah.